My name is Mia. I was born just 3 minutes after my twin sister, Chloe. But to our parents, Diane and Gregory Adams, those 3 minutes seemed like a lifetime. From as early as I can remember, I could feel that my world would always revolve around Chloe's overwhelming shadow. Our family lived in a peaceful small town in Vermont. My mother, Diane, was an insurance agent who always dressed impeccably, as if she were ready to go on TV. My father, Gregory, ran an appliance repair shop, constantly busy with tools and orders. On the outside, we looked like an average middle-class family. But if you spent enough time with us, you'd quickly realize who was truly the center of the universe: Chloe. The favoritism started subtly. When Chloe and I were 4, Mom took us to buy new shoes for kindergarten. Chloe got to pick a pair of pink suede shoes from the newest collection, while I was handed a pair of faded sneakers marked down by 70%. I still remember the look on Mom's face as she told the clerk, "These will do. She just needs something to wear." From toys to clothes, everything Chloe had was shiny, brand new, and expensive. I usually ended up with items left over in the clearance bins. On our 5th birthday, we had a small party at home. When it was time for gifts, Chloe received an American Girl doll complete with her own wardrobe. And me, I got a crumpled rag doll from the discount store. Guests clapped as Chloe hugged her gift. I just looked down quietly, hiding the lump in my throat. Every holiday felt like a scripted performance. Each Christmas, under the glowing tree, Chloe's gifts piled high like a mountain. I had just a few small boxes, wrapped in wrinkled old paper. Even the birthday cake decision was never shared. Every year, Mom asked Chloe what flavor she wanted, and that was it. One year, I mustered the courage to say, "Mom, I like chocolate cake too." She frowned slightly and replied shortly, "Chloe doesn't like chocolate, so we'll get vanilla." Answers like that, repeated over and over, slowly wore me down. And even the way they looked at us was different. When Chloe spoke, our parents would lean in, hanging on to her every word like it was gospel. When I spoke, their eyes would skim past me and land right back on Chloe, smiling proudly at whatever she had just said. The family photos lining our hallway couldn't hide the imbalance either. Chloe was always at the center, holding something bright and special. I stood off to the side, often half hidden behind someone or smiling stiffly. Once, at a parent-teacher conference, my teacher praised my writing skills and even suggested I join an advanced class. But instead of being thrilled, Mom just shrugged and said dismissively, "It's nice that Mia's doing okay, but Chloe is the pride of this family." Slowly, I learned to stay silent, not to ask, not to expect anything. But no matter how hard I tried, the hurt stayed buried inside, like a wound that refused to heal. By the time we were 6, Chloe's schedule was packed like a little star's. Monday was ballet, Tuesday piano lessons, Wednesday painting class, Thursday swimming, Friday acting lessons. Weekends were filled with performances and competitions. And me? Mom handed me a list of homework with a cold reminder. "Mia, you need to be more independent. Don't cause trouble." I spent silent afternoons in an empty house, the only sounds being the scratch of my pencil and the ticking clock. I sat alone at the dining table, diligently doing spelling drills, solving math problems, reading thick books. Meanwhile, Chloe came home with Mom, showing off her ballet medals, while Mom gushed to Dad over every small detail, as if it were a miracle. One time, I brought home a perfect score on a test, my heart bursting with hope. Mom barely glanced at it before setting it aside without a word. That same evening, Chloe proudly showed off a painting that won second prize at her art class. Dad jumped up to snap a picture, and Mom kissed Chloe's forehead, her eyes shining like she'd discovered treasure. I clutched my test paper and hid it under my pillow, letting my silent tears soak through. When I was 8, I started writing short stories. My English teacher praised my imagination and suggested I join the children's writing club at the local library. I brought the invitation home, excited, but Mom coldly said, "Chloe doesn't even have enough time for all her classes. You think you can just demand things?" She tossed the invitation into the trash right in front of me, then signed Chloe up for a new modern dance class. Some nights, I lay awake staring at the ceiling stars above my bed. Chloe had a whole sky full of glowing stars, while I had just a few, stuck on hastily with old glue. I told myself that maybe if I tried harder, did better, my parents would notice. But those hopes were slowly crushed. Everything came to a head one winter night. I woke up thirsty, tiptoed downstairs for water, and heard voices from the living room. The lights were still on. I crept closer and hid behind the wall. "Greg, do you think we made a mistake?" Mom's voice was heavy. "What do you mean?" Dad asked tiredly. I think we should have only had one child. Chloe is enough. She's smart, beautiful, has so much potential. And Mia..." Mom sighed. "She just exists." "Yeah," Dad agreed after a pause. Life would have been so much easier with just Chloe. I gripped the glass tightly, feeling winter's chill flood my chest. I turned and ran back to my room, not caring how loud my footsteps were. That night, I buried myself under the covers, biting my lip until it bled to keep from crying out loud. Every word Mom said cut deeper than the last, slicing away the last fragile pieces of hope I had. The next morning, I came down to breakfast, face cold as stone. Mom handed Chloe a brand new, bright red scarf. I got a pair of old knit gloves, still smelling faintly of last year's peppermint. Chloe squealed with thanks. I gave a faint smile and tucked the gloves into my coat pocket, along with all the nameless hurt. From that day on, I stopped asking. I stopped hoping to join the classes Chloe got to attend. I stopped wishing my parents would see me. Instead, I buried myself in my studies. The only way I knew to prove that I deserved to exist, even if, in their eyes, I was just an unnecessary shadow next to a dazzling star. I started keeping a journal. Every night I wrote down my feelings, my suffocated dreams, the words I never dared to speak aloud. I didn't know if those pages could save me from the loneliness, but at least they kept my heart from turning to stone. After that night, I stopped looking to my parents with hopeful eyes. The yearning to be loved, acknowledged, and treated fairly, I wrapped it all up tightly and buried it deep. Like a letter that would never be sent. I poured everything into school. While other kids spent afternoons at sports or hanging out, I camped out in the school library, surrounded by books. I drilled advanced math problems, dissected tough reading passages, pored over every detail in history textbooks. I didn't study for praise. I studied to prove that even if they never saw me, I could still shine on my own. My English teacher, Miss Simmons, was the first to notice the change. One day, after a reading comprehension test, she called me over. "Mia, have you thought about entering the state essay competition? Your test was outstanding." I nodded, a quiet joy swelling in my chest. Not because someone demanded it, not to make anyone proud, but because for the first time I felt like I was on the right path. Meanwhile, Chloe's discomfort was growing obvious. Every time a teacher praised me in class, she would slam her hand on the desk or sigh loudly. Once, after Miss Simmons praised my essay during a school assembly, Chloe slammed her book down so hard the whole room turned to stare. At home, I overheard her grumbling to Mom. "Those teachers are obsessed with Mia. I do well too, but they only talk about her." Mom set her tea down and replied dully, "Chloe, don't take it to heart. People tend to pity the less fortunate ones." That comment, instead of hurting me, made me quietly laugh. I didn't need pity. I had real ability, and day by day I was proving it. My grades skyrocketed, my name regularly appeared on the school's honor roll, and I was even invited to serve as a teaching assistant in several subjects. I joined the debate club, the academic team, and won a county-level science competition. Each time awards were announced, I stood proudly on stage under the bright lights, while Chloe sat in the audience, her face darkened. Chloe grew more impatient and irritable. She started spreading complaints around school, claiming teachers were biased toward me, that the administration was unfair to her. One day, I overheard her telling a group of friends that I was nothing special, just a parrot who was lucky to have teachers on her side. But I didn't respond. I let the numbers speak for me. My grades, my awards, the scholarship interview invitations from top universities. One evening, as I sat at my desk under the soft glow of my lamp, filling out nearly completed scholarship applications, I overheard Mom and Dad talking in the living room. "I think Chloe's starting to feel the pressure," Mom whispered. "She's never had to compete within her own family." "Mia's just overcompensating," Dad replied. "Chloe is still the real hope." I bit down on my pen, not sure whether to laugh or cry. No matter how well I did, in their eyes, I would always be a desperate attempt to catch up to a star they had crowned themselves. But this time, I didn't feel sadness. Instead of tears, a quiet strength rose inside me. I wouldn't compete for their love. I would step out of that vicious cycle and rise on my own. The next day, I applied for the school's special advanced program, a program Chloe didn't even qualify for. When I held the acceptance letter in my hand, I knew I had officially started my own journey, a journey that didn't need anyone's nod or approval, but my own. One sweltering Sunday afternoon, while cleaning the bookshelf in the living room, I stumbled upon an old album wedged deep in the bottom shelf. The leather cover was faded and peeling, and the pages inside had yellowed with time. I opened it, brushing my fingers over the old photos. Unfamiliar faces, friendly smiles hiding quiet mysteries. One photo stopped me cold. It was my mother, young and simple, standing between an elderly couple with kind faces. Underneath, in shaky handwriting, someone had written, "Diane with Mom and Dad, 1992. Flipping through more pages, I found a crumpled letter, still carrying a faint, musty smell, with scrawled words, "Dear daughter, we hope to see you and the children again." My heart pounded in my chest. Growing up, I had never heard Mom mention her parents. When I asked, she only said, "They're not part of our lives anymore." I'd once naively believed maybe they had passed away, but now everything in front of me told a different story. That night, while Mom and Chloe were busy watching their favorite TV show, I snuck into Mom's office. In the bottom drawer beneath piles of old bills and thick notebooks, I found a black address book. Amid dozens of crossed-out names, one entry was circled in red. "Do not contact. William and June Carter." I quickly scribbled the address onto the corner of my scratch paper, my heart pounding with a strange excitement. I didn't know what I would find there, but I knew I had to find out the truth. The next afternoon, I lied to Mom, saying I had a study group at school. Instead of heading home, I took bus 7, winding through old streets until I reached a poor neighborhood on the town's edge. House number 42 matched the address. A small white house with a faded green picket fence and a garden full of wild daisies. I walked up to the door, my hand trembling as I knocked. The door opened to reveal an elderly woman with neatly pinned silver hair, staring at me in shock. Behind her stood a thin, elderly man, leaning on the doorframe. "Who are you?" the woman asked, her voice trembling. I swallowed hard and forced my voice to stay steady. "I'm Mia Adams, Diane's daughter." They froze as if struck by lightning. The woman covered her mouth with her hand, tears glistening in her eyes. The man stepped forward and took my hand, his own shaking. "Oh God. June, look, she looks just like Diane at her age," he choked out. They invited me inside. The small house was humble but incredibly warm. Family photos covered the walls, old porcelain dishes gleamed from careful polishing, and the smell of fresh apple pie filled the air, wrapping me in a world where love didn't have to be earned or bargained for. We sat on an old couch and talked for hours. They told me about my mother's childhood, about the hard times filled with laughter. When I asked why Mom had cut ties, June only shook her head. Sadness heavy in her eyes. "Your mother chose a different life," she said softly. She thought being poor was shameful. She wanted a life without us. William took my hand in his rough but warm grasp. But child, our love never faded. No matter what Diane thinks, you are always welcome here. I couldn't hold back my tears. For the first time in my life, I truly felt like I belonged somewhere. Before I left, June pressed a small bag of cookies into my hands and whispered, "Whenever you miss home, just come here. Our door is always open." I hugged the bag tightly, stepping out into the golden afternoon sun. A gentle breeze brushed my hair, as if reassuring me that no matter how many years of neglect I had endured, there would always be a place, and people, ready to welcome me simply for being myself. Graduation day arrived on a bright June morning. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my navy blue gown, feeling a bittersweet ache. Even though no one at home had asked or seemed to care, I promised myself that today would be mine. I had fought too hard to reach this moment. To the ceremony, when the principal announced my name as valedictorian, the auditorium erupted in applause. I stepped onto the stage, clutching my honors diploma, the spotlight blinding my tear-filled eyes. I scanned the crowd for my family. Mom sat in the front row, but instead of watching me, she was whispering with Chloe, both giggling as if the ceremony were nothing more than an interruption in their busy day. As I stepped down, hugging my diploma to my chest, I heard Mom shout, "Chloe! Chloe! Look up here!" Out of thousands, she chose the moment Chloe received her certificate of completion to wave and cheer, as if Chloe had just won a Nobel Prize. I gripped my purse tightly, swallowing the lump of disappointment rising in my throat. Watching friends receive warm hugs and congratulations from their families only made the emptiness inside me grow. Afterward, the family gathered on the school lawn for pictures. I stood stiffly at the side as Mom eagerly snapped photo after photo of Chloe holding her certificate. Meanwhile, my valedictorian diploma stayed clutched under my arm, unnoticed. That evening, at a half-hearted celebration dinner at home, Mom suddenly beamed with excitement, like she had been waiting all day for this moment. "Guess what?" she announced, rattling the silverware in her excitement. "We're going to Hawaii to celebrate!" My heart skipped a beat. Hope, foolish, naive hope, flickered inside me. "Just the three of us," Mom continued sweetly. "Dad, me, and Chloe." He froze. "And you, Mia," Mom said, turning to me with a hollow smile. "You'll stay here to watch the house. Plus, you have your cafe job, don't you?" Chloe burst out laughing, setting her glass down with a loud clink. "Don't worry, Mia. I'll send you tons of pictures. Blue ocean, white sand, 5-star restaurants. You'll feel like you're right there with us." Sat there, my chopsticks slipping from my hand onto my plate, my heart numb. "You understand, right?" Mom pressed, as if all she needed was my nod to enjoy her trip guilt-free. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "Yes, I understand." That night, as they packed their brand-new luxury suitcases, I sat alone by the window, staring at the twinkling summer stars. I wondered what I had even hoped for. A thank you, a hug, a plane ticket? Those things had never been mine, and they never would be. The next morning, I leaned against the doorway as a taxi pulled up. Chloe, wearing oversized sunglasses and a designer jumpsuit, turned back to wave, her mocking smile clear. "You have a great time, Mia," she sang. "Don't let your little waitress job kill your dreams." The car doors slammed shut and the taxi drove off, carrying their laughter and indifference away from me. I closed the door, slid down against the cold wall, and, for the first time in a long while, let myself cry. But the tears weren't just from being left behind. They washed away every foolish expectation I had ever placed on that family. When the tears dried, I stood up, wiped my face, and grabbed my phone. I dialed June's number. "Grandma," I said, my voice shaking but determined. "Can I come over today?" Her familiar, gentle voice answered immediately. "Oh, of course, sweetheart. We're always waiting for you." I hung up, grabbed the bag I had packed the night before, locked the door behind me, and stepped into the world, leaving behind a house full of cold emptiness. A new chapter was waiting for me, and this time, I wasn't looking back. When I arrived at the little white house, William and June were already standing on the porch, their faces lit up as if they were welcoming a VIP. June pulled me into a warm hug, and William gently patted my back. A simple gesture that somehow healed years of silent wounds. Inside, the house was filled with the comforting smell of toasted bread and cinnamon. A small homemade banner hung on the wall. "Congratulations, sweet Mia." Just a simple line. But it made my heart nearly burst. We shared a lunch that June had prepared: grilled meat, potato salad, and the crispy apple pie she had promised to make just for me. Afterward, William stood up and picked up a small box wrapped in shimmering silver paper. "We have a special gift for you, Mia," he said, his eyes brimming with joy. I opened the box, my heart pounding in my chest. Inside wasn't a piece of jewelry or a book like I expected. It was a gleaming car key. I looked at them, feeling like I was dreaming. "We've thought about this for a long time," Grandma June said with a gentle smile. "You've worked so hard. You deserve it." I ran outside, where a brand new silver Lexus IS was parked, shining under the late afternoon sun. I stood there, hands covering my mouth, eyes filled with tears. In my whole life, I had never imagined receiving a gift just for me, let alone something so extravagant. How could you?" I stammered. "But Grandpa William chuckled, his kind smile deepening the lines at the corners of his eyes. "When your mother left, we invested our small savings into a few tech projects. Luckily, they did far better than we ever dreamed. But living simply is in our blood, so we barely spent anything. We saved it for what truly matters." I hugged them tightly, unable to say anything except let my silent tears fall on their shoulders. And it didn't stop there. As we sat back in the living room, Grandpa William pulled out a pale blue envelope. "Remember when you talked about applying to college?" he asked, handing it to me. With trembling hands, I opened it. Inside was a copy of an acceptance letter from Columbia University, with a full-ride scholarship for all 4 years. I was so overwhelmed I couldn't speak. Every quiet effort, every sleepless night studying, every lonely tear, it had all been worth it. Grandma June gently patted my hand, her voice warm as sunlight. "We believe in you, Mia. You don't have to work for anyone's approval anymore. You've always been enough." That night, I sat on their front porch, the car key nestled in my palm, watching the sunset paint the sky purple. A new chapter was unfolding in front of me, one where I was no longer a forgotten shadow trailing behind someone else's dreams. I had a real family, a place where love wasn't tied to achievements, image, or expectations. Just love. For being myself. When they came back from Hawaii, I was already sitting on the bench out front, an iced tea in hand, watching the afternoon sun cast a golden glow on the shiny Lexus parked in the driveway. I didn't rush inside. I wanted to witness the moment when their lies and self-satisfaction crashed into reality. As the taxi pulled up, Mom was the first to step out. Her hair perfectly curled under the summer sun, she squinted and shaded her eyes as if the bright light overwhelmed her. Then her gaze landed on the new car, and she froze like someone had punched the air out of her lungs. Chloe followed, dragging her Gucci suitcase across the concrete. She spotted the Lexus, stumbled a step, then spun around, mouth wide open. What is this?" Mom stammered, her eyes glued to the car. Dad, still wearing sunglasses, slowly pulled them off, his eyes bulging in disbelief. I stood up, casually twirling the car key between my fingers like it was second nature. "Welcome home," I said calmly. "Oh, by the way, this is my graduation gift from my grandparents." The air froze. For a moment, my parents, who had never cared enough to even ask about my grandparents, now openly showed their greedy yearning. "They're still alive?" Mom croaked. "Not only alive," I smiled, "but doing better than you ever imagined." Chloe looked around wildly, as if hoping the scene would vanish, but the Lexus gleamed stubbornly under the afternoon sun. Mom recovered first. She grabbed Chloe's hand, her smile suddenly sugary sweet. "Mia, you know, Chloe's about to start college. She really needs a good car. This one suits her perfectly." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you saying I should give my car to Chloe?" "Exactly," Dad chimed in, his tone turning sharp. "You work at a coffee shop. You don't need a luxury car." "Chloe needs it for school, internships, building her future." Chloe stood there, her greedy gaze glued to the Lexus as if it already belonged to her. I laughed, a full, clear laugh that echoed through the still afternoon. "It's hilarious," I said, walking toward the car. "How you abandoned me, made me fend for myself, and now, seeing me with something, you shamelessly try to snatch it away." Dad stepped forward, his face red with anger. "If you refuse to share, then don't expect to stay in this house." "Oh, I don't plan to," I replied, popping open the car trunk to reveal neatly packed suitcases. Mom's mouth dropped open. Chloe muttered incoherently. "I've been ready for this for a long time," I said firmly. "This house, this place that never made me feel like I belonged, I don't need it anymore." I shut the trunk, grabbed the keys, and opened the car door. "And one more thing," I added, my smile razor sharp. "I got accepted into Columbia University. Full scholarship." That hit like a dagger to their hollow pride. Mom staggered, clutching the taxi door to stay upright. Chloe clutched her purse strap, her face twisting in disbelief. "Let them away." I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and lowered the window. "Have a wonderful summer," I said, my voice cool and soft, "while I start my new life." I pressed the gas, and the Lexus glided away, leaving behind the shocked, regretful faces of people who had once treated me like an invisible shadow. I spent that summer living with William and June in their little white house with wild daisies blooming all around. Each morning, I woke to the sound of Grandpa reading the paper in the living room and Grandma bustling in the kitchen making breakfast. My life became strangely peaceful, as if all those years of hurt were just a distant dream. They didn't ask about my parents, nor did they force me to retell the past. They simply made it clear that here I had a place. Without fighting, without proving myself. For the first time, I was loved unconditionally. As the fall semester at Columbia approached, they surprised me with one more gift. A small, cozy apartment about 10 minutes from campus. It was on the third floor of a quiet building with gleaming wood floors, wide windows that caught the sunlight, and a little balcony, perfect for growing flowers or reading in the afternoons. "You need a space of your own to start this new chapter," Grandpa said as he handed me the keys. I hugged them tightly, my tears unhidden. I finally had a true home, not because of blood ties, but because of love. The days that followed were filled with preparations. I got a part-time job at a nearby coffee shop to earn some extra money and settle into college life. The job was busy, but I loved the lively chatter, the rush of orders, the stories of young people brimming with energy. I made friends in class. People who knew nothing of my past and only saw me as who I was, a determined 18-year-old full of dreams. There was Emma, a sociology major who laughed like wind chimes, and Daniel, an economics major who stayed after class to tackle tough essays. They didn't pry about my family or poke into the gaps of my story, and I was grateful for that. My life overflowed with new experiences, late-night study sessions, heated classroom debates, busy shifts at the cafe. I began to taste true freedom. Freedom from judgment, comparison, and suffocating expectations. But then, One late September afternoon, while reading on my balcony, my phone rang. On the screen flashed a name I thought I'd left behind. Mom. I let it ring until it stopped, then coldly hit decline. Messages flooded in afterward. Mia, I miss you. Family is always family. You can't stay mad forever. Your grandparents aren't young anymore. You should think about the future. I didn't respond. Deep down, I knew the real reason behind those sweet words. News of the new car, the apartment, even my full scholarship must have reached them. The same people who once looked down on my grandparents were now scrambling to rebuild family ties. Soon after, while I was making coffee at work, I saw Mom and Dad standing hesitantly outside the cafe window. Chloe stood beside them, arms crossed, her face cold as ice. I turned away and kept serving customers as if I hadn't seen them at all. That night, I blocked their numbers, social media accounts, and emails. I had closed that chapter, and there was no reason to reopen it for people who only cared when there was something to gain. Later, I sat alone on my balcony, watching the warm yellow lights stretching across the street. I hugged a small pillow to my chest, breathing in the peace that now filled every corner of my life. Life at Columbia flew by faster than I ever expected. My days were packed with fascinating lectures, lively discussions, and late-night study groups. I worked weekends at the cafe, saving up for small dreams of my own. My little apartment with its sunlit balcony became my safe corner to study, read, and savor quiet evenings free of fear or loneliness. I started allowing myself to dream bigger. No longer confined by the need for others' approval, I defined my own worth. I took the toughest classes, worked under top professors, and even began planning a community project to help struggling students. One late afternoon in the library, Daniel walked over carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look like you're about to save the world," he teased, setting a cup in front of me. I laughed. Truly laughed. Feeling, for the first time, free to share my dreams without fear of being mocked or belittled. We grew close. Unlike the transactional relationships I had witnessed growing up, what Daniel and I built was rooted in mutual respect. He listened to my stories with quiet patience, no pity, no judgment, just simply listening. One autumn evening, as we sat together on the balcony of my apartment, Daniel looked at me intently and said, "Mia, you know something. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met." I turned toward him, the city lights reflecting in his eyes, feeling my heart, for the first time in years, no longer weighed down. "I used to think I needed recognition to exist," I said softly. "But now I understand. I just need to be myself." Daniel took my hand, his warm grasp holding mine in a silence full of meaning. When winter came, I received an internship offer from a major nonprofit organization that supports underprivileged students. It was the dream I had once clung to while sitting curled up by the window of my old house, imagining a world where kindness and fairness truly existed. I called my grandparents to tell them the news. Over the phone, June's voice broke with pride. "My sweet girl did it," she whispered, not to please anyone else, but because her own heart led the way. During the year-end holidays, I visited them. We decorated the Christmas tree together, baked gingerbread cookies, and shared old stories. There were no extravagant parties, no expensive gifts, just genuine laughter and long, warm hugs. One afternoon, while helping Grandma June sort through old photos, I found an old family picture, the one where I had always been tucked away in the shadows. I held the photo, smiled, and gently placed it back in the box. "I don't need them anymore," I said firmly. "I have a real family now." Grandma June squeezed my hand, tears shimmering in her aging eyes. "A real family," she whispered, "is where you are loved for exactly who you are, without any conditions." When spring arrived, I stood before the mirror, wearing my honor program graduation robe from Columbia. Staring at the young woman in the reflection, I saw someone entirely new. Not the little girl who once looked up in desperate hope, but a young woman full of confidence, strength, and freedom. Outside the window, fresh buds began to sprout, signaling a new beginning. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but this time, I wasn't afraid. With love, respect, and endless opportunities waiting, I moved forward, steady, proud, and full of hope. From a little girl once considered an afterthought in her own family, Mia rose through sheer determination and resilience. She no longer chased approval from those who never truly loved her, but instead found her worth through knowledge, genuine love, and the freedom to choose her own life. Mia's journey reminds us that sometimes family isn't where we are born, it's where we are truly loved, and it's we ourselves who write our destiny. What do you think about Mia's journey and the choices she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more touching and inspiring family stories in the upcoming videos. I am Olivia Harrington, the youngest daughter of Richard and Eleanor Harrington, two powerhouses in New York's financial world. My family owns Harrington & Co., a multi-million-dollar investment empire with a portfolio spanning real estate, stocks, and venture capital. To the public, my parents were not only financial masterminds, but also highly influential figures, frequently gracing the covers of prestigious business magazines. My sister, Victoria Harrington, is the pride of our family. From a young age, she excelled in every field our parents expected of her. Educated at the most prestigious institutions, she entered the financial world with confidence and sharp strategy. At just 25, Victoria became the youngest executive director of the company, quickly taking control of key investments. With her flawless appearance, exceptional intelligence, and ability to dominate the market, she was seen as the perfect, unblemished gem of the Harrington family. As for me, I never quite fit into their world. Even as a child, I felt like an outsider among numbers, charts, and hours-long shareholder meetings. My parents expected me to follow in their footsteps, but I had no interest in billion-dollar deals or high-pressure negotiations. What fascinated me were projects on sustainable energy and environmental strategy consulting, fields my family had never valued. I pursued a degree in environmental science, determined to find new solutions for efficient resource use. When I turned down an internship at Harrington & Co. to work at a renewable energy startup, my parents were utterly disappointed. They never said it outright, but their silence and disapproving looks spoke volumes. At family dinners, I was always on the periphery of conversations, listening to my parents and Victoria discuss profits, mergers, and investment funds, while my ideas on sustainability were dismissed as childish hobbies. Victoria never had to fight for recognition. She was exactly the kind of person our parents had always wanted me to be: strong, sharp, and entirely focused on building the family's wealth. She often looked at me with pity, occasionally making light-hearted remarks about how I was wasting my potential on things that don't generate profit. I knew that in their eyes, I was just a dreamer with no real impact. They believed I would never build anything of real value. But I had never needed their approval. What I didn't expect was that my life was about to change in ways no one, myself included, could have foreseen. Everything changed with a single phone call on a cold February morning. I was at my office, focused on completing a report on renewable energy storage methods, when my phone vibrated. Victoria's number. She rarely called me unless it was something serious. "Olivia," her voice came through, lower than usual. "Where are you?" "At the office." "What's wrong?" A long silence stretched between us, making my heart tighten. Something wasn't right. "Mom and Dad," she took a deep breath as if trying to steady herself. "They were in a plane crash. No one survived." I froze. Her words hit me like a gust of icy wind, leaving me dizzy. "No, that can't be." My voice trembled. Their private jet crashed in the Colorado mountains on the way from New York to Los Angeles. The news will break soon. Even though there had always been a distance between my parents and me, hearing they were suddenly gone still left me stunned. They had always been strong, always in control of everything, and now they were gone. 3 days later, their funeral was held at a grand church in Manhattan. Influential figures from the financial world attended, and speeches praising Richard and Eleanor Harrington's remarkable careers filled the air. Meanwhile, I stood quietly at the sidelines, still trying to process that they were truly gone. But before the grief had even settled, an even harsher truth awaited me. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was summoned to the family lawyer's office, the official reading of the will. The office was located in a skyscraper in the heart of Manhattan. When I entered, Victoria was already seated in a leather chair, composed, her gaze filled with confidence. Opposite us sat Albert Sterling, the family's longtime attorney, a man who had witnessed countless deals and negotiations within the Harrington empire. Clearing his throat, he opened a thick file in front of him. "First and foremost, let me express my deepest condolences to both of you," he said in a measured tone, before getting straight to the point. "According to the official will of Mr. and Mrs. Harrington," he glanced over his reading glasses, "the entirety of Harrington & Co.'s shares, the real estate properties in New York, Miami, and London, along with all investments and liquid assets, will be transferred to Miss Victoria Harrington." Even though I had anticipated this outcome, hearing those words still felt like a punch to the chest. "And as for Miss Olivia Harrington," Mr. Sterling continued, flipping to another page. I waited, a flicker of hope stirring within me. Maybe they had left me a small portion of the estate. Maybe they had thought of me, even just a little. "You will inherit an old ranch in rural Texas, formerly owned by your grandfather, Howard Harrington." An eerie silence filled the room. I blinked. "A ranch? In Texas?" Victoria let out a sharp laugh, making no effort to conceal her disdain. "Well, isn't that interesting?" She looked at me, a smirk curling her lips. "Maybe Mom and Dad thought you'd be better suited to tending livestock than running a financial empire." My hands clenched under the table. I looked up at Mr. Sterling, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is that all? No company shares, no bank accounts, no investments?" Mr. Sterling skimmed through the documents before nodding. "The Harrington Ranch, spanning over 150 acres, along with some related legal paperwork." He slid an envelope toward me. "Nothing else." Victoria crossed her arms, her eyes glinting with triumph. "Well, there you have it, Olivia. If you want to live like a real farmer, be my guest. But if you ever need financial assistance, I'd be happy to help. With a reasonable interest rate, of course." I stared at the envelope in front of me, fighting to suppress the emotions rising inside me. My parents had truly believed I was incapable of achieving anything. When I left the office, all I had in my possession was an old key and a deed to an abandoned ranch in the middle of the Texas desert. No shares, no valuable assets, no place in the company. Just a piece of land my father had once deemed worthless, a place no one in the family had ever spoken of. But what unsettled me the most wasn't the unfairness of the will. It was the real reason behind it. Why had they left me that ranch? Was it their way of quietly cutting me out of the family? Or was there something more that I didn't know? As I stepped out of the skyscraper, I looked up at Manhattan's gray sky, a new determination brewing inside me. If this was all they had left me, then I would find out why. 3 days later, I booked a flight to Texas. After a 3-hour flight and an additional 2-hour drive through the dusty Texas roads, I finally arrived. Harrington Ranch. A faded wooden sign with barely legible letters stood at the entrance. Beyond it stretched an expanse of land, vast and endless. Dry fields, scattered cacti, and an old 2-story wooden house stood alone in the arid landscape. I stepped out of the car, glancing around. There was no sign of life, only the wind whistling through the barren trees. This was what my parents had left me? I took a deep breath and walked toward the main house. The wooden door creaked as I pushed it open, revealing a space covered in dust and the scent of aged timber. The interior was simple, seemingly untouched for years, but strangely, everything remained intact, as if its owner had only just left. As I walked down the hallway, a series of old photographs on the wall caught my attention. One in particular made me stop. A black and white picture of my grandfather, Howard Harrington, standing beside a large building that looked like a storage facility or a workshop. I didn't know much about my grandfather. Growing up, I had only heard my father speak of him with disappointment. Howard had once been an investor, but according to my father, he had wasted the last years of his life chasing some foolish dream out here on this ranch. And then it struck me. If my father thought this place was worthless, why hadn't he sold it? I picked up the photograph, examining it more closely. My grandfather's eyes gleamed with pride, but what truly caught my attention was the small inscription at the bottom. Harrington Experimental Facility, 1987. An experimental facility? Here? On this ranch? I stepped outside, scanning my surroundings. In the picture, behind my grandfather, stood a large metal structure. I walked around the property, searching for anything similar. And then I saw it. About 200 meters from the main house, amidst the dry grass fields, stood a large metal warehouse with a heavy door. The marks of time were evident: peeling paint, rust spreading across its surface, and an old padlock dangling from the handle. Why would a warehouse in an abandoned ranch need to be locked? I reached into my pocket and pulled out the key the lawyer had given me. Could this be the key to the warehouse? I slid it into the lock and turned it gently. A soft click echoed in the still air. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit space inside. Sunlight streamed in, illuminating rows of dust-covered wooden shelves, large metal containers, and a desk tucked into the corner of the warehouse. On the desk, a stack of yellowed papers lay untouched. I stepped inside, running my fingers along the wooden surface. A worn leather notebook sat atop the pile, its cracked cover bearing a handwritten title: The Harrington Project. My heartbeat quickened as I flipped through the first few pages. Inside were detailed notes on a project my grandfather had worked on: geological surveys, complex calculations, and hand-drawn diagrams mapping out layers of rock and soil. One particular word appeared repeatedly throughout the pages: lithium. I held my breath. Lithium. A crucial element in the rechargeable battery industry, renewable energy, and electric vehicles. One of the most valuable metals of the 21st century. Had my grandfather been researching lithium? I quickly sifted through the rest of the documents. A detailed map of the ranch surfaced with a specific area circled in red. Below it, my grandfather had written, high reserves, significant potential, absolute confidentiality. My throat went dry. My grandfather had discovered a lithium deposit right beneath this ranch. And my father, the man who had always dismissed this place as worthless, had likely never realized its true value. I took a deep breath, looking around the warehouse. This wasn't just a storage space. It was where my grandfather had hidden one of the most significant discoveries of his life. But a bigger question loomed in my mind. If my grandfather knew about this, why did he keep it a secret? Why didn't he extract it? And most importantly, did anyone else know about it? A sense of unease crept over me. I gazed toward the horizon, where the sun was slowly sinking behind the distant mountains. Maybe I had just uncovered a secret no one wanted me to know. And I wasn't sure if that was a good thing. I sat on an old wooden chair inside the warehouse, my hands trembling slightly as I flipped through my grandfather's documents. A lithium deposit. I had read about the surge in the rechargeable battery and renewable energy markets. Lithium was essential for electric vehicles, energy storage systems, and even the electronic devices we used every day. Its value had skyrocketed over the past decade, and major corporations around the world were scrambling to secure mining rights. My grandfather had known about this decades ago. But the biggest question remained: why didn't he mine it? I sat in silence, thinking. Maybe he knew he couldn't fight my father, a man who prioritized short-term profits over investing in something no one cared about back then. Maybe he feared that if the information got out, the land would be swallowed up by powerful corporations. Whatever the reason, one thing was undeniable. Now, This was my opportunity. I didn't have time to hesitate. If I didn't act fast, someone else would uncover this secret before me. 3 days later, I left Texas and returned to New York. This time, I no longer felt lost among the towering skyscrapers or the bustling streets. I had a plan, and I knew exactly what I needed to do. The first call I made was to Ethan Carter, a lawyer specializing in intellectual property and corporate law. I had met Ethan a few years ago while working on a renewable energy project. He was meticulous, discreet, and incredibly sharp. Exactly the kind of person I needed in this situation. When I explained what I had found, Ethan didn't bother to hide his astonishment. Olivia, if what you're saying is true, then this could be one of the largest lithium deposits in the US. I nodded. And I need to protect it before anyone else finds out. Ethan agreed immediately. He suggested establishing a new company, completely detached from the Harrington name, to hold the patents and extraction rights. Then he got to work filing intellectual property claims related to my grandfather's extraction method, ensuring that no one could use the technology without my permission. The second call was to Rachel Monroe, a geologist I had worked with on a renewable resource study. If anyone could accurately assess the lithium reserves beneath my ranch, it was Rachel. "I need you to fly to Texas immediately," I said over the phone. "What's going on?" "You'll understand when you get here." 3 days later, Rachel arrived at the ranch with a team of specialized equipment. We spent 2 days surveying the area, collecting soil samples, and taking precise measurements. When Rachel returned with the results, I saw the excitement in her eyes. "Olivia, you don't just have a lithium deposit. You have one of the richest lithium reserves I've ever seen." I held my breath. If you mine it correctly, this could become a strategic supply source for the entire clean energy industry. I wasn't sure what I had expected, but hearing this confirmation sent a surge of adrenaline through me. I was holding an opportunity that could change the game. But I couldn't do this alone. Mining lithium wasn't a simple task. I needed significant investment to turn this idea into reality, and I knew exactly who could help me. Nathan Pierce. Nathan was a venture capitalist known for bold deals in the green technology sector. I had met him a few years ago at a renewable energy conference, and I knew he was always looking for groundbreaking opportunities. I arranged a private meeting at a luxury hotel in New York. As I laid out what I had discovered, Nathan leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. "Olivia, if these numbers are accurate, you're sitting on a multi-billion-dollar asset." I nodded. "But the real question is, what do you plan to do with it?" I took a deep breath, holding his gaze. "I don't want to sell it to a major corporation just so they can drain it dry and destroy the environment," I said. "I want to do it the right way. I want to develop the sustainable extraction technology my grandfather was researching. And I need funding to get started." Nathan studied me for a moment, before a slow smile spread across his face. "All right, Olivia. I'll invest $150 million, but I want you to guarantee that you maintain full control. If you let anyone else interfere, you'll lose everything." I clenched my fists. "You have my word." A few weeks later, Harrington Lithium Solutions was officially born. A completely new company, with no ties to the Harrington family, created to oversee the lithium mining operation in Texas. I was ready. I knew that Victoria and my family would soon figure out what was happening. But this time, I was no longer the girl they had dismissed. This time, I was the one in control. 3 months after Harrington Lithium Solutions launched, the renewable energy market had already started paying attention to the name. The first contracts were signed with leading technology companies in the rechargeable battery and electric vehicle sectors. But the real breakthrough came when we secured a lithium supply agreement with Tesla and a major renewable battery manufacturing conglomerate. In just 6 months, the company's valuations skyrocketed to over $1.2 billion. The media called us the game changer in clean energy. Financial news outlets began reporting on an unknown company that had suddenly become a critical player in the global lithium supply chain. But the most significant part? No one knew who was really behind it. From the very beginning, I had meticulously hidden my identity. Harrington Lithium Solutions didn't carry the Harrington name. It was registered under a shell corporation, keeping it far from any association with my family. But secrets can't stay hidden forever. One morning, as I sat in my office reviewing the latest geological report, my phone rang. Victoria Harrington. I stared at the name on the screen, fully aware that the storm I had been preparing for was finally here. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Olivia, her voice came through, slow and deliberate. I need to confirm something. I smiled, keeping my tone calm. What is it? Harrington Lithium Solutions. Is that your company? I raised an eyebrow, feigning surprise. Why would you think that? Victoria let out a quiet scoff. I asked around. This company appeared out of nowhere, yet it has massive funding and controls one of the richest lithium reserves in the US. And more importantly, it's operating on land that belongs to you. I didn't respond. Did you go behind all of our backs? Her voice carried suspicion. Did you find something that Mom and Dad never knew about? I remained steady. And if I did? Victoria was silent for a long moment before exhaling a soft laugh. You're smarter than I thought, Olivia. I could picture her sitting somewhere in the Harrington & Co. headquarters, fingers laced together, trying to keep her composure while internally seething. I want to meet, Victoria said. We should discuss a partnership. I chuckled. Are you sure this is a partnership offer or just a way for you to take control? Don't be naive, Olivia. Her voice sharpened. I have resources, connections, influence. If you let me in, Harrington Lithium Solutions could become an empire. If not, I tilted my head. If not, what? I will find a way to take back what belongs to this family. I had always known Victoria wouldn't back down easily. Just 1 week after that phone call, Harrington & Co. officially filed a lawsuit against me. The claim? The Harrington family declared that all assets belonging to my grandfather were part of the family estate and should be under the control of the corporation. What did they want? Me. They wanted me to hand over the lithium mining rights to Harrington & Co. and merge my company into their conglomerate. I laughed when I read the lawsuit. Did they really think I would give up so easily? I had anticipated this from the very beginning. When I founded the company, I had Ethan Carter, my intellectual property attorney, construct an airtight legal structure. Every land ownership record was fully legalized under my name. All lithium extraction patents were registered under an anonymous trust. Harrington Lithium Solutions had zero legal ties to the Harrington family. When my legal team responded to Harrington & Co., they had absolutely no legal grounds to win the case. Victoria and the board had moved too late, and I knew it was driving them insane. After 4 weeks of intense legal battles, the court ultimately dismissed my family's lawsuit. I had won. Harrington Lithium Solutions remained entirely mine. But I knew this was only the beginning. Victoria wasn't going to give up that easily. I could picture her sitting in her office, glaring angrily at the headlines in the news. A mysterious startup is threatening the dominance of the lithium industry. Harrington & Co. fails to secure control over one of the largest lithium mines in the US. Now, she knew I was no longer the insignificant girl they once dismissed. And I was certain Victoria would find another way to take me down. But this time, I was ready. 2 months after my family lost the lawsuit, I heard that Victoria was in serious financial trouble. Insiders in the investment world whispered about her reckless decisions. After failing to seize control of Harrington Lithium Solutions, Victoria had placed massive bets on real estate ventures and a major investment in traditional oil energy, a sector steadily losing ground to renewable energy. Things only worsened when the real estate market crashed and the oil industry suffered under new energy policies. What once seemed like highly profitable investments had turned into financial deadweight. And then the unthinkable happened. Victoria was forced to sell her Manhattan penthouse to stay afloat. The same lavish penthouse where she had hosted elite financiers, where private investor meetings had taken place, and which had stood as a symbol of her power. Now she had to put it on the market. But what Victoria didn't know was that I had already moved ahead of her. I had anticipated this the moment I saw cracks forming in her investment portfolio. Through one of my shell companies, an anonymous investment fund I had established while building Harrington Lithium Solutions, I quietly entered the bidding war for the penthouse. And just as I expected, I acquired it for less than half its original value. No one, not even Victoria, knew that the new owner was me. Until one late afternoon, my phone rang. Victoria. I picked up, keeping my voice composed. What do you need, Victoria? There was a brief hesitation on the other end, a rare thing for her, but she quickly regained her composure. Olivia? I know you're the one who bought my penthouse. I smirked. Faster than I expected. Oh? I replied, feigning indifference. Would you be willing to sell it back to me? Victoria asked, her tone steady, but I could hear the hint of desperation underneath. I just need a little more time to restructure my finances. I'll pay full market value. I glanced out my office window, savoring this moment. The moment when my sister, the same woman who had mocked me, dismissed me, and believed I would never amount to anything, was now asking me for help. I took a slow breath before responding. Victoria, do you remember when we were in the lawyer's office? Silence. You told me that if I ever needed financial help, you'd be happy to assist, with a reasonable interest rate. I paused, letting my words sink in. Do you remember that? I asked softly. A long pause, then her voice returned, quieter now but still trying to maintain control. So, you're refusing? I smiled, relishing the sweet victory. No, Victoria. I'm just reminding you that the world moves fast. Then I hung up. After losing the penthouse, Victoria continued to struggle with her failing investments. Harrington & Co. gradually fell into crisis. The meteoric rise of Harrington Lithium Solutions caused major investors to turn away from Victoria's company. They no longer had faith in real estate and oil. Instead, they poured their capital into clean energy, where I was leading the charge. In less than a year, Victoria, once the head of a financial empire, was forced to sell off more assets just to maintain cash flow. And me? Harrington Lithium Solutions was becoming a dominant force in the lithium mining industry. Not only had I maintained full control, but I had also expanded operations, developed new technologies, and secured even more strategic contracts. I didn't need ruthless revenge. My success was the clearest answer. One winter evening, as I sat in the penthouse that had once belonged to Victoria, I received a message. From her. I was wrong. But you've changed a lot too, Olivia. If you ever want to talk, I'm still your sister. I stared at the screen for a long time. A part of me wanted to respond, but another part knew that we were no longer the sisters we used to be. I had spent my whole life seeking validation from my family, but now I realized I didn't need it anymore. I set my phone down, stood up, poured myself a glass of water, and gazed out of the massive window. New York City still shined as brightly as ever. But this time, I was no longer standing in the shadows. I stood by the window of my new penthouse, overlooking the dazzling lights of New York City. The glow of the skyscrapers reflected off the glass, reminding me of the years I once felt lost in this place. But now, everything had changed. I was no longer the girl my family dismissed, the one excluded from important conversations, the one they deemed worthless in their world. I had built my own empire, and no one could take that away from me. The phone on my desk vibrated, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the screen, an email from my old high school with the subject line, Special Invitation. Guest speaker for this year's graduation ceremony. I raised an eyebrow and opened the email. Dear Olivia, I'm Principal Sullivan, currently organizing this year's graduation ceremony. We would love to invite one of our most outstanding alumni to return as our guest speaker. This year's theme is Finding Value in What's Overlooked. We believe your story will inspire many students, especially those who feel underestimated or unrecognized. We hope you can attend. Sincerely, Principal Sullivan. I stared at the screen. Finding value in what's overlooked. I let out a quiet laugh. A theme perfectly aligned with my story. Because I had been overlooked. I had been underestimated by my family, dismissed as an outsider. And yet, from the land they had abandoned, I built a billion-dollar company, revolutionized the lithium industry, and became an unshakable force in the clean energy revolution. I no longer needed my family's validation. My success spoke for itself. 2 weeks later, I stood on the stage at my old high school's graduation ceremony. Hundreds of students sat below, eagerly waiting. Some of my former teachers were also present, a few of them recognizing me and nodding in acknowledgement. I stepped up to the podium, feeling the weight of every gaze in the auditorium. Taking a deep breath, I began. Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Harrington, and many years ago, I was sitting exactly where you are now. A few murmurs spread through the crowd. Perhaps some students had heard my name in the news. When I was a student here, I believed that in order to succeed, I had to follow the path that others had set for me. I thought that if I didn't fit their definition of success, I would never achieve anything meaningful. But I was wrong. The room fell silent. I continued, my voice growing stronger. I was underestimated. My family owned a major financial empire, and they believed that if I didn't follow their path, I would never accomplish anything significant. When my parents passed away, my sister inherited everything. And me? I paused, scanning the audience. They left me an old ranch in the middle of the Texas desert. A few students chuckled, while others widened their eyes in surprise. They thought it was worthless. They believed I could do nothing with it. But they were wrong. I let my words sink in before continuing. I refused to let others decide my worth. Instead of complaining, I chose to look deeper into what I had been given. And I discovered it wasn't worthless at all. I locked eyes with the front row, where my former teachers sat listening intently. As it turned out, the land they dismissed as useless contained one of the richest lithium reserves in the U.S. Because of that, I built a billion-dollar clean energy company, becoming a key supplier for some of the biggest technology firms in the world. I noticed a few students gape in shock, while others whispered excitedly to each other. Why am I telling you this? I asked. I'm sharing my story so you understand that your worth is not determined by others. Even if you feel overlooked, even if you believe you're not good enough, even if your path looks different from everyone else's, don't ever let anyone convince you that you can't achieve something great. Sometimes, the things that seem worthless hold treasures only you can see. I scanned the audience, catching the glimmer of inspiration in some students' eyes. Maybe one of them felt overlooked, just like I once did. And maybe, someday, they would find their own lithium mine. I took a deep breath, closing my speech. And finally, if anyone has ever told you that you can't do something great, remember this. Success is the clearest answer. The auditorium erupted in applause. I smiled and stepped off the stage. Today, I didn't need my family's validation. Because I had validated myself. Olivia Harrington's story is not just a personal journey. It's a profound lesson in self-worth, perseverance. In life, many of us have been underestimated, dismissed, or pushed aside because we didn't fit society's conventional definition of success. But success is not determined by others. It belongs to those who dare to see opportunity in what's been overlooked, believe in their own potential, and relentlessly pursue their goals. In the end, the most important validation doesn't come from others. It comes from within. What do you think about Olivia Harrington's journey? Have you ever been underestimated or faced a similar challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more inspiring stories about life, family, and the lessons that shape us.